They ravaged the galaxy until the humans finally answered. The stars looked peaceful from Earth. People went about their lives, working and playing without much thought to what might be happening in distant parts of the galaxy. News from far off. Colonies took weeks to arrive, and most citizens cared little for events so removed from their daily concerns. This changed on a quiet Tuesday morning when Commander John Hayes received the first distress call. He had just settled into his office at Earth's Interstellar Defense Initiative headquarters when the message came through. His coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips as the voice, broken by static, filled the room. Unknown vessels. Overwhelming. Our defenses. Casualties in the thousands. Please send. The transmission cut off abruptly. John set down his mug and leaned forward, his fingers flying across the control panel. Origin? He asked the computer. Proxima Colony, came the EO reply. Transmission terminated 15 seconds ago. Proxima Colony was home to 30,000 people. It had been established 20 years ago as humanity's first serious attempt at creating a self-sustaining settlement beyond the solar system. Within hours, a second distress call arrived, this time from New Horizon, a mining outpost near the Tau Ceti system, then a third from Eden Prime. By evening, 5 human colonies had sent desperate pleas for help before going silent. Admiral Alan Porter called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Representatives from Earth's unified government gathered in the underground chamber beneath Geneva. John watched as they filed in, their faces grim. "What are we dealing with?" asked President Laura Hudson, her voice steady despite the dark circles under her eyes. John stepped forward, activating the holographic display in the center of the room. "We believe it's a coordinated attack across multiple systems. The pattern suggests a single hostile force moving methodically through our outer colonies." "Hostile force?" General Sam Wilson scoffed. "We've had peaceful contact with 6 different alien civilizations. None have shown any aggressive tendencies." "This isn't one of our known contacts," John replied. "Based on the fragmented data we've received, we're dealing with something entirely new." Susan Miller, the IDI's chief scientist, stood up. Her normally neat appearance was disheveled as if she had been working without rest. "We've analyzed the weapon signatures from the Proxima attack. They don't match anything in our database. The energy readings are, well, they're off the charts." "Do we have visual confirmation of the attackers?" President Hudson asked. Susan nodded and tapped her tablet. The hologram shifted to show grainy footage captured by Proxima's orbital cameras before they were destroyed. Dark ships with strange, organic-looking features moved in perfect formation. They fired weapons that seemed to distort the very space around their targets. "We're calling them the Vraxians," Susan explained. "One of the Eden Prime scientists managed to transmit some data before they were overrun. The attackers called themselves by a name that roughly translates to the Vrax or Vraxians." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, despite its rapid advancement into space, was still relatively new to interstellar travel. Their navy was designed for exploration and colony protection, not full-scale war. "What do they want?" General Wilson finally asked. "Resources, primarily," Susan answered. "They strip the planets they attack. Minerals, water, organic matter. They take it all before moving on. And the colonists?" President Hudson's voice was barely above a whisper. Susan's face hardened. "Most are killed in the initial assault. Some are taken. We don't know why or for what purpose." John watched the faces around the table. Fear, anger, disbelief. But most of all, a growing realization that humanity faced an existential threat unlike anything in its history. "What's our defensive capability?" Admiral Porter asked, turning to John. "Limited," John admitted. "Our fleet is scattered across 12 sectors. Even if we recalled every ship, we'd be outnumbered and outgunned based on what we've seen." Porter's mouth tightened into a thin line. "Then we need to buy time. Send warnings to all remaining colonies. Begin evacuation protocols for the most vulnerable outposts." "And Earth?" President Hudson asked. "Should we begin preparations here as well?" Porter exchanged glances with John before answering. The Vraxians seem to be moving in a pattern. If they continue their current trajectory, we estimate it will be months before they reach Earth. But yes, we should begin preparations immediately. The meeting continued late into the night as plans were made, orders issued, and hard truths confronted. John found himself standing alone by the window afterward, looking up at the stars that no longer seemed peaceful. His tablet beeped with a message from Dr. Olivia Wright, a brilliant physicist who worked in the classified research facility beneath the Pacific Ocean. The message was brief, but made his heart race. Found something. Need to meet. Eyes only. The next morning, John descended into the depths of the research facility. Security was tight with multiple checkpoints and biometric scans. Dr. Wright met him in her laboratory, a vast space filled with equipment analyzing recovered alien technology from previous peaceful encounters. Olivia looked exhausted but excited. Her eyes shone with the intensity that came with breakthrough. "I've been studying the transmission data from the attacked colonies," she said without preamble. "There's a pattern in the Vraxian communication signals." She led him to a workstation, where complex waveforms danced across the screen. "See this?" She pointed to a recurring sequence. "Their entire network operates on a quantum field with this signature. It's why our defenses can't penetrate their systems." "And this helps us how?" John asked, struggling to follow the technical details. Olivia smiled for the first time. "Because every system has a weakness. Their quantum field creates a closed network, secure but isolated. If we could access it, we could potentially disrupt their entire command structure." John felt the first stirring of hope. "Can we do that?" "Theoretically, yes. But we'd need to capture intact Vraxian technology to fully understand the entry points." Her smile faded. "And we'd need to act quickly before they adapt their systems." As John left the facility, his tablet lit up with new alerts. Another colony had gone silent. The Vraxian advance continued unabated. Back in his office, John drafted a proposal for a covert operation to capture Vraxian technology. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but if Dr. Wright was right, it might be humanity's only chance. As night fell over Earth, most citizens remained unaware of the approaching storm. They went about their lives, watching entertainment streams, and arguing about trivial matters. Few noticed the increased military activity or the subtle changes in government announcements. John stood at his window once more, looking at the peaceful scene below. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he murmured to himself. Soon enough, every human on Earth would understand the gravity of their situation. Soon humanity would have to answer the Vraxian threat, or perish. In the darkness of deep space, the Vraxian fleet continued its methodical advance, leaving dead worlds in its wake. They ravaged the galaxy until the humans finally answered. Part 2. The colony of New Eden was beautiful in the morning light. Rolling hills covered in blue-green grass stretched to the horizon. The main settlement sat in a valley between two mountains, its buildings a mix of prefabricated structures and newer ones built from local materials. Lieutenant Paul Garcia stood at the observation post watching the sunrise. He had been stationed on New Eden for 6 months, part of a small military contingent assigned to protect the colony. Until now, it had been a peaceful assignment. "Sir, we're picking up unusual readings at the edge of the system," said Sergeant Kelly Daniels, her eyes fixed on the monitor. Paul frowned. "Scheduled transport arrivals?" "No, sir. These are much larger than transport ships. Energy signatures don't match anything in our database." A cold feeling settled in Paul's stomach. They had received the alerts from Earth about the Vraxian attacks, but New Eden was supposed to be far from their current path. "Sound the alarm," Paul ordered. "Begin evacuation protocols." Kelly nodded and hit the emergency broadcast system. Throughout the colony, sirens began to wail. The peaceful morning erupted into controlled chaos as colonists rushed to gather essential belongings and head to the evacuation points. Governor Frank Carter's voice came over the communication system. "This is not a drill. All civilians report. To your designated evacuation zones. Bring only what you can carry. I repeat, this is not a drill. Paul gathered his squad in the command center. Listen up. Our job is to protect the civilians until they're safely aboard the evacuation ships. The Varaxians haven't reached the surface yet, but planetary sensors show they'll be here within 2 hours. How many ships do they have? Asked Corporal Ben Fisher, the youngest member of the squad. Too many, Paul replied honestly. We can't hope to defeat them. Our mission is to buy time for the evacuation. The team moved out, setting up defensive positions around the spaceport where 8 evacuation ships waited. The colony had a population of 15,000, and the ships could carry them all, if they had enough time. Kelly established an observation post on a nearby hill, her sniper rifle beside her. Through her binoculars, she could see families rushing toward the spaceport, carrying children and dragging suitcases. Lieutenant, we have a visual, Kelly reported through her comm. Vraxian ships entering the atmosphere. At least 15 dropships. Paul looked up to see dark shapes descending through the clouds. They moved with frightening speed and precision. All units prepare for contact, he ordered. Remember, we just need to hold them until the ships are away. The first Vraxian dropship landed 3 kilometers from the spaceport. Its hull split open like a blooming flower, and tall figures emerged. Even from a distance, they were intimidating. 9 feet tall, with bodies that seemed part organic, part machine. They moved with unnatural grace despite their size. First wave approaching from the northeast, Kelly reported, her voice tight. They're not just destroying things. They're gathering colonists. Paul switched his view to that direction and felt his blood run cold. The Vraxians were herding captured colonists into collection vessels. They weren't just killing, they were harvesting. Focus fire on any approaching the spaceport, Paul ordered. We can't help those already captured. The first evacuation ship lifted off, filled to capacity with colonists. Paul felt a moment of relief, until a Vraxian fighter streaked across the sky and fired. The evacuation ship exploded in a ball of flame. No, Paul shouted, watching the burning wreckage fall back to the surface. All units, we need anti-aircraft support now. His squad repositioned, setting up the few surface-to-air missiles they had. When the next Vraxian fighter approached, they were ready. The missile struck true, and the alien craft spiraled down in a trail of smoke. Good shot, Paul said, but there are more coming. The battle for New Eden grew desperate as more Vraxian troops landed. Their weapons cut through the colonial defenses with frightening ease, energy beams that seemed to distort the air itself, turning solid matter into dust. The evacuation continued amid the chaos. The second and third ships managed to escape the atmosphere, protected by the squad's missile fire. The fourth was damaged but still flyable. Lieutenant, they've broken through the eastern perimeter, reported Corporal Fisher, his voice crackling with static. We can't. His transmission cut off abruptly. Paul tried to reach him. Fisher? Fisher? Report. There was no response. Governor. Carter approached Paul at the command post, his face streaked with dirt and blood. How many ships have gotten away? 3 clean, 1 damaged, Paul replied. 4 more still loading. Carter looked grim. We're running out of time. The Vraxians are surrounding the spaceport. We'll hold as long as we can, Paul promised, though he knew it might not be enough. Kelly's voice came over the comm again. Sir, you need to see this. Her tone made Paul's skin crawl. Through Kelly's camera feed, Paul saw what had alarmed her. The captured colonists were being taken into the larger Vraxian vessels. Some went willingly, as if in a trance. Others fought, and were subdued with brutal efficiency. What are they doing to them? Carter whispered, watching the feed. I don't know, Paul admitted, but we need to get as many people out as possible. The 5th evacuation ship was fully loaded now, its engines warming up for departure. Paul organized his remaining forces to protect it until launch. As the battle intensified, Paul received a transmission from an unexpected source. A small stealth ship, not part of the colony's fleet, requested emergency landing clearance. This is Captain Ethan Ross of the USS Nighthawk, came the transmission. We're here on direct orders from Admiral Porter. We need to speak with your commanding officer immediately. Paul directed them to a secure landing pad while continuing to coordinate the defense. By the time Captain Ross reached the command center, the situation had grown even more dire. Vraxian forces had breached the western perimeter, and only 3 evacuation ships remained. Ethan Ross was tall and serious with the intense focus of someone on a critical mission. Lieutenant Garcia, I understand your situation is grim, but I need your help. We're a little busy trying not to die, Paul replied, gesturing to the battle raging around them. What I'm here for might help prevent this from happening to other colonies, Ross said. We need to capture Vraxian technology intact. Dr. Wright believes there's a weakness we can exploit, but we need samples to study. Paul stared at him. You want us to what? Walk up to those monsters and ask for their weapons? Not exactly, Ross said. But my team has a plan, and we need local support to execute it. As they spoke, the 6th evacuation ship lifted off, narrowly, avoiding Vraxian fire. Paul looked at Governor Carter, then back at Captain Ross. We'll help you, but our priority remains evacuating as many colonists as possible. Ross nodded. Understood. My team will share the details en route to the target area. As the last evacuation ship prepared for departure, Paul knew many colonists would be left behind, including himself and his remaining squad members. But if Captain Ross's mission succeeded, perhaps their sacrifice would not be in vain. Kelly joined them, her rifle slung over her shoulder. The last ship is almost full. They're saving spots for essential personnel. Paul looked at his team. All of you, get on that ship. Sir? Kelly looked surprised. That's an order, Sergeant. I'm staying with Captain Ross's team. As his squad reluctantly boarded the final evacuation ship, Paul turned to face the approaching Vraxian forces. The future of humanity might depend on what they did next, here on the doomed colony of New Eden. They ravaged the galaxy, until the humans finally answered. Part 3. 6 months passed since the fall of New Eden. Earth's defense forces worked around the clock to prepare for what seemed like an inevitable attack. Strange thing was, the Vraxians hadn't come to Earth yet. Instead, they continued to hit outer colonies in what looked like random patterns. Dr. Olivia Wright stood in the underground facility, now called Prometheus Project. Around her, dozens of scientists and engineers worked on computers and strange equipment. Some of the machines were clearly not of human design. Progress report? Admiral Porter asked as he entered the lab. His uniform was crisp, but his face showed signs of strain. We're making breakthroughs daily, Olivia replied. She led him to a central workstation where complex diagrams filled the screens. The technology Captain Ross's team recovered from New Eden was exactly what we needed, and the cost was high, Porter said quietly. Lieutenant Garcia and most of Ross's team didn't make it back. Olivia nodded solemnly. Their sacrifice won't be wasted. We've confirmed my theory about the Vraxian communication network. She pointed to one of the screens showing wave patterns. Their entire system operates on a closed quantum field. It's why we could never penetrate their communications or defenses. But the field has a pattern we can use against them. Porter studied the screen, though the science was beyond his understanding. Can we use this to stop them? Better than that, said a voice from behind them. Dr. Kevin Barnes approached, carrying a small device that glowed with a soft blue light. Kevin was brilliant but odd, with messy hair and clothes that never quite matched. We can shut them down, completely. Kevin placed the device on the table. We call it the Quantum Cascade Disruptor. Once deployed inside their network, it will create a feedback loop that will crash their entire command and control system. And how exactly do we get this thing inside their secure network? Porter asked, arms crossed. Kevin and Olivia exchanged glances before Olivia answered. Someone needs to physically board their command ship and activate it from inside. Porter stared at them. You want to send people onto the main Vraxian vessel? That's suicide. Not necessarily, Olivia argued. Captain Ross's mission proved we can infiltrate their ships if we're careful, and we've learned more about their technology since then. We've studied their movement patterns too, Kevin added. They aren't random attacks. They're following resource signatures of specific elements. We can predict where they'll strike next. Porter was silent for a long moment. Even if we knew where they'd be, getting onto their command ship would require a level of stealth technology we don't possess. Actually, Olivia said with a small smile, we do now. She led Porter to another section of the lab where a ship sat in a massive hangar. It looked like a standard Earth military vessel, but its hull had an unusual shimmering quality. The USS Nighthawk, Olivia explained. We've retrofitted it with technology reverse-engineered from the Vraxian ship components. It can now mask its energy signature and visual profile to match the surrounding space. Porter walked around the ship, examining it with a critical eye. And you believe this can get close enough to the Vraxian command vessel without detection? Yes, Olivia said confidently, especially during a battle when their attention is divided. Porter's face darkened. You want to use our fleet as a distraction? A necessary one, Kevin said. The Vraxians are going to attack somewhere anyway. At least this way, we control when and where the confrontation happens. Before Porter could respond, an aide rushed into the lab. Admiral, urgent message from the outer sensor network. Porter took the tablet the aide offered and read the message, his expression growing grim. It seems the decision may be out of our hands. A massive Vraxian fleet has just entered the solar system. Olivia and Kevin exchanged alarmed looks. How many ships? Olivia asked. Over 300 vessels, Porter replied, and they're on a direct course for Earth. The next few days were a flurry of activity. Earth's combined fleet positioned itself in defensive formation around the planet. Civilian evacuation to underground shelters began worldwide. The Prometheus project team worked frantically to finalize their plans. Captain Ethan Ross, one of the few survivors of the New Eden mission, was called to lead the insertion team. His experience with Vraxian vessels made him the obvious choice, despite his recent promotion. This mission is different from New Eden, Ross told his assembled team in the Nighthawk's briefing room. Last time we were trying to recover technology. This time, we're deploying it. He activated a holographic display showing a massive Vraxian ship, far larger than any they had encountered before. This is their command vessel, designated Terminus by our intelligence. It coordinates their entire fleet. Lieutenant Commander Diane Peterson, the Nighthawk's pilot, studied the image. How do we find the central network node on a ship that size? Dr. Wright will guide us, Ross answered, nodding to Olivia, who stood nearby. She's coming with us. This announcement caused murmurs among the team. Civilian scientists rarely joined combat missions. The quantum cascade disruptor needs to be connected directly to their central network, Olivia explained. I'm the only one who can properly calibrate it once we're inside. Sergeant Jose Ramirez, a hardened veteran whose family had died on New Eden, checked his weapon. How long will we have once the device is active? 3 minutes before their systems detect the intrusion, Olivia said. Then we need to be as far away as possible. Admiral Porter entered the briefing room. The team stood at attention. The Vraxian fleet will reach Earth orbit in 12 hours, Porter informed them. Our fleet will engage them directly, creating the distraction you need to approach the terminus. He looked at each team member in turn. Make no mistake, this is our last stand. If this mission fails, Earth falls, humanity falls. The weight of his words settled on everyone in the room. No pressure, Diane muttered, trying to lighten the mood. As the briefing concluded, Olivia found herself standing alone, looking at the holographic image of the terminus. The ship was enormous, 15 kilometers long, dwarfing Earth's largest vessels. Ross approached and stood beside her. Having second thoughts, Doctor? Not about the mission, she said, but I keep wondering why they're built this way. The Vraxian ships aren't just mechanical, they have organic components. Almost like they're partly alive. All the more reason to shut them down, Ross replied. We launch in 3 hours. Get some rest if you can. As Ross walked away, Olivia continued to study the hologram. Something about the Vraxian design nagged at her scientific mind. They weren't just conquerors, they were something else entirely. But what? The answer would have to wait. In 12 hours, Earth would face its greatest threat, and Olivia would be at the heart of humanity's last desperate gambit. They ravaged the galaxy until the humans finally answered. Part 4 Space around Earth lit up with explosions as the human fleet engaged the Vraxian armada. Earth's ships, though fewer in number, fought with desperate courage. Behind them, their home planet glowed blue and green against the blackness of space. Inside the USS Nighthawk, Captain Ethan Ross watched the battle unfold on the main screen. His small stealth ship hung back from the fighting, waiting for the right moment to make their move. "The fleet won't be able to hold them for long," Lieutenant Commander Diane Peterson said from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved steadily over the controls, keeping the Nighthawk hidden in the shadow of a small moon. "They just need to keep them busy enough for us to slip through," Ethan replied. He turned to the rest of his team. Final equipment check. The insertion team consisted of 6 members. Besides Ethan and Diane, there was Sergeant Jose Ramirez, who handled weapons, communications specialist Lisa Brown, security expert Will Johnson, and Dr. Olivia Wright, the civilian scientist whose presence was crucial to their mission. Each wore a specialized suit designed to protect against the atmospheric conditions inside Vraxian vessels. The suits were dark gray and fitted with stealth, technology that would help mask their life signs. "Quantum Cascade Disruptor is secure," Olivia confirmed, patting the container strapped to her side. The device was smaller than she had originally designed, barely larger than a human hand. Its power, however, was potentially Earth-saving. Ethan nodded. "Remember the plan. We dock with the terminus during the peak of the battle. We move to the central chamber where their network node is located. Dr. Wright connects the device. Then we get out before it activates fully." "Simple," Jose said with a grim smile. "Just walk into the most dangerous ship in the galaxy, mess with their brain, and walk out. What could go wrong?" "Everything," Will replied. "That's why we have contingency plans A through F." Lisa checked her communication equipment one last time. "I've loaded the Vraxian language patterns we've decoded. It's not much, but it might help us navigate their systems." "Admiral Porter is signaling," Diane announced. "The main fleet is engaging the central Vraxian force." On the screen, they could see Earth's ships moving into an aggressive formation, targeting the middle section of the Vraxian fleet. The aliens responded predictably, concentrating their firepower on the immediate threat. "That's our cue," Ethan said. "Diane, take us in. Everyone else secure for approach." The Nighthawk's engines hummed to life, barely audible even inside the ship. They slipped away from the moon's shadow and moved toward the massive battle, staying at the very edge of the conflict. "Activating adaptive camouflage," Diane reported. The ship's hull began to shift, its surface bending light to match the surrounding space. They watched through the view screen as they passed by destroyed vessels, both human and Vraxian. The battle was fierce, with energy weapons cutting through shields and hulls. Earth ships were fighting valiantly, but the Vraxian vessels kept coming, seemingly endless in number. "There it is," Ethan said quietly. The terminus. The Vraxian command ship was enormous, easily 15 kilometers long. Unlike the other Vraxian vessels, which were sleek and predatory, the terminus had a more organic appearance. Its surface, pulsed with strange lights and appendages, extended from various sections like the limbs of some cosmic creature. "It's beautiful, in a terrifying way," Olivia murmured, studying the ship with scientific curiosity. "Find us a way in, Diane," Ethan ordered. Diane guided the Nighthawk around the perimeter of the terminus, scanning for entry points. "There," she said after a tense minute. "A docking port on the underside. It appears to be receiving smaller ships." "Perfect," Ethan replied. "Can you match their approach vector?" "I can try." Diane adjusted their course, bringing them in behind a small Vraxian vessel heading for the docking port. "If we stay in their sensor shadow, we might just pass for one of theirs." The team held their breath as the Nighthawk followed the Vraxian ship into the massive docking bay. Inside, dozens of similar vessels were arranged in neat rows. Vraxian soldiers moved among them, their tall armored forms dwarfing the human ship. Power down to minimal levels, Ethan whispered, though there was no way the Vraxians could hear them. Everyone suit up and prepare to disembark. They donned their helmets and checked their weapons one last time. The air inside the Vraxian ship was breathable for humans, but barely. The suits would filter it properly and protect them from any harmful elements. Remember, Ethan said, move quietly, stay together, and follow the plan. If we're spotted, we go to Contingency A, create a diversion and continue to the objective. Diane locked down the ship's controls. Auto-return sequence is programmed. If we don't make it back, the Nighthawk will head home on its own with whatever data it's collected. The team moved to the airlock. Ethan went first, then Jose, followed by Olivia, Lisa, Will, and finally Diane. They emerged onto the docking bay floor and immediately sought cover behind some alien cargo containers. The inside of the terminus was even stranger than the outside. The wall seemed almost alive, pulsing with an eerie light. The floor beneath their feet felt slightly soft, as if organic rather than mechanical. Which way? Ethan asked, looking to Olivia. She consulted a small device on her wrist. The strongest quantum field emissions are coming from that direction. She pointed toward a large corridor leading deeper into the ship. The central node should be near the middle of the vessel. They moved carefully through the terminus, avoiding Vraxian patrols when possible. The ship's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, some filled with strange machinery, others with what looked like living tissue. This place gives me the creeps, Will whispered as they passed a room where Vraxian soldiers stood in some kind of suspension field. Are they sleeping? Or charging, Olivia suggested. The line between biology and technology is blurred with the Vraxians. They had traveled for nearly an hour deeper into the ship when Lisa's translator picked up Vraxian communications. They're talking about the battle, she informed the team. Our fleet is putting up more resistance than they expected. Good, Jose said. Give them hell. Finally, they reached a massive door that blocked their path. Beyond it, according to Olivia's readings, lay the central chamber and the network node they sought. How do we get through? Diane asked, examining the door. There was no obvious control panel or handle. Olivia studied the organic-looking surface. These ships respond to Vraxian biosignatures. She pulled a small device from her pack. This contains a sample we collected from New Eden. It might fool the door. She pressed the device against what seemed to be a sensory pad. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a giant inhaling, the door slid open. Nice trick, Ethan said appreciatively. They entered the central chamber and froze in awe. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that reached up hundreds of meters. In the center was what could only be described as a brain, a massive pulsating organ surrounded by technology. Tendrils of light and matter extended from it in all directions, connecting to the walls, floor, and ceiling. The neural network, Olivia breathed. It's more integrated with the ship than we thought. Is that going to be a problem? Ethan asked, eyeing the pulsating mass with concern. Olivia shook her head. No, but it changes things. We're not just attacking their computers. We're attacking their collective consciousness. She moved toward the neural network, removing the quantum cascade disruptor from its container. The small device gleamed in the strange light of the chamber. How long will it take? Ethan asked, his eyes scanning for threats. Surprisingly, the chamber had minimal security. The Vraxians had never expected anyone to reach this far into their ship. Just a few minutes to connect and calibrate, Olivia replied, working quickly. Then 3 minutes until full activation. As Olivia worked, connecting the device to the neural network, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. Why was this room so poorly guarded? Why had their journey through the ship been relatively easy? Olivia, he said slowly, is it possible they wanted us to reach this point? Before she could answer, a sound like 1,000 voices speaking at once filled the chamber. The neural network pulsed brightly and the team felt a presence in their minds. Alien, vast, and curious. They know we're here, Olivia said, her fingers working faster. But they don't understand what we're doing. They're studying us. Just hurry, Ethan urged, raising his weapon as shadows began to move at the edges of the chamber. I think we're about to have company. They ravaged the galaxy until the humans finally answered. Part 5 tall Vraxian figures emerged from the shadows around the central chamber. They moved with strange grace despite their size. Unlike the soldiers the team had avoided earlier, these Vraxians wore no armor. Their bodies were a mix of organic material and technology with glowing circuits visible beneath translucent skin. "Keep them back," Ethan ordered. Jose and Will raised their weapons, forming a protective circle around Olivia as she worked on connecting the quantum cascade disruptor. But the Vraxians did not attack. They simply stood, watching, their large eyes reflecting the pulsing light of the neural network. "They're curious," Lisa whispered, her translator picking up faint communications between the aliens. "They don't understand why we're here." "Almost done," Olivia said, her fingers moving quickly over the device. 30 more seconds. The massive neural network pulsed faster now, as if sensing the threat. The strange presence in their minds grew stronger, probing, questioning. Images flashed through the humans' thoughts, planets burning, species dying, an endless journey through the stars. Olivia gasped as the connection suddenly went deeper than she expected. Information flooded her mind, not just data, but memories, emotions, the collective experience of an entire species. "They're refugees," she said, her voice shaking. "Their homeworld was destroyed millennia ago. They've been wandering the galaxy ever since, consuming resources, assimilating other species into their collective." "That doesn't excuse what they've done," Jose growled, his weapon still trained on the nearest Vraxian. "No," Olivia agreed. "But they don't see it as destruction. They see it as salvation, bringing other species into their collective consciousness. They don't understand that we don't want that." The device beeped, indicating a successful connection. The quantum cascade disruptor was now linked to the neural network. "It's ready," Olivia announced. "Once activated, we have 3 minutes to get back to the ship." Ethan nodded. "Do it." Olivia hesitated, her hand over the activation switch. The neural network pulsed, sending another wave of images into her mind. The Vraxians' desperate flight from their dying world, the centuries spent adrift in space, the gradual merging of their biology with technology to survive. "Wait," she said. I think I can communicate with them." "We don't have time for a first contact scenario," Ethan said urgently. "We need to disable their fleet before Earth is destroyed." "Just give me 1 minute," Olivia pleaded. "I might be able to end this without destroying them." Ethan checked the time. The battle outside was still raging. Earth's fleet was holding, but barely. 1 minute, he agreed reluctantly. Olivia stepped closer to the neural network, letting her mind open to the alien presence. She projected images of her own: Earth, humanity, peaceful cooperation between species. The Vraxians responded with confusion. Their collective had never encountered a species that refused assimilation. In their mind, resistance was irrational. Why would any being choose individual existence over joining the collective consciousness? Olivia struggled to convey the human concept of freedom, of personal identity. She showed them Earth's history, how humans had fought against those who would conquer or control them. "They're listening," Lisa said in wonder, her translator picking up changes in the Vraxian communication patterns. "They're actually considering her message." The neural network pulsed, this time with different colors. The Vraxians in the chamber stepped back, their postures changing. "Time's up," Ethan said. "We need to make a decision." Before Olivia could respond, a violent tremor shook the ship. Alarms blared throughout the terminus. "What's happening?" Will asked, struggling to maintain his balance. Lisa checked her communications device. "The Earth fleet just landed a major hit on the terminus. They've breached the outer hull." Olivia felt panic ripple through the Vraxian consciousness. The connection with the neural network intensified, becoming almost painful. "They're going to retaliate," she said urgently. "They're charging their main weapon system if they fire it at Earth." "Activate the disruptor," Ethan ordered. "Now." Olivia pressed the activation switch. The quantum cascade disruptor hummed. "To life." its soft blue glow turning bright white as it began to interface with the neural network. "We need to go," Ethan said, pulling Olivia away from the pulsating brain. 3 minutes starts now. The team backed toward the entrance, keeping their weapons trained on the Vraxians, but the aliens made no move to stop them. They seemed transfixed by the disruptor and the changes beginning to ripple through their network. As the humans fled through the corridors of the terminus, they noticed immediate effects. Lights dimmed and brightened in irregular patterns. Doors opened and closed randomly. Vraxian soldiers they passed seemed disoriented, some collapsing where they stood. "It's working," Diane said as they ran. "The cascade effect is disrupting their entire system." They reached the docking bay just as the 2-minute mark passed. The Nighthawk sat where they had left it, untouched amidst the chaos now spreading through the Vraxian ship. "Everyone aboard," Ethan ordered. "Diane, get us out of here as soon as possible." As they strapped into their seats, a violent shudder ran through the terminus. On the view screen, they could see Vraxian ships throughout the fleet beginning to drift aimlessly. Weapons powered down, engines failed. "The disruptor is affecting the entire fleet," Olivia observed. "Just as we hoped." The Nighthawk detached from the docking bay and accelerated away from the terminus. Behind them, the massive command ship seemed to be powering down section by section, like a city experiencing a cascading power failure. 1 minute to full cascade, Olivia announced, watching the countdown on her device. They were almost clear of the Vraxian fleet when another tremor, more violent than before, shook the terminus. A blinding light erupted from within the ship, not an explosion but a pulse of energy that washed over the entire fleet. "What was that?" Ethan demanded. Olivia checked her readings, her expression puzzled. "That wasn't the disruptor. That came from the neural network itself. It's like they activated something in response." The pulse spread through the Vraxian fleet, touching each ship in turn. As it passed, the vessels didn't explode or break apart as expected. Instead, they simply went dormant, their lights dimming to a faint glow. "They're shutting down," Olivia realized. "Not destroying themselves, just sleeping." Admiral Porter's voice came over the communication system. "Nighthawk, do you copy? What's happening out there?" "We're clear of the terminus, Admiral," Ethan reported. "The disruptor worked, but not exactly as expected. The Vraxian fleet has gone dormant." "Dormant? Not destroyed?" "No, sir. It appears they've initiated some kind of hibernation protocol in response to the cascade." There was a long pause before Porter responded. "Return to Earth immediately. Bring Dr. Wright and all your data. We need to understand what we're dealing with." As the Nighthawk headed home, Olivia stared out at the drifting Vraxian fleet. The connection she had made with their consciousness lingered in her mind. They weren't evil, she realized, just fundamentally different. They had never considered that assimilation might be seen as destruction rather than salvation. "What happens now?" Diane asked, setting course for Earth. "Now we have a choice," Olivia replied softly. "We can finish what we started and destroy them while they're vulnerable, or we can try to find another way." Ethan looked at her. "What other way could there possibly be with creatures that consumed entire worlds?" "Communication," Olivia said simply. "They listened to me at the end. They chose to hibernate rather than continue fighting. That means they can change." As Earth grew larger in their view screen, Olivia knew the hardest part of their mission was still ahead. Not defeating the Vraxians, but deciding what kind of answer humanity would ultimately give to those who had ravaged the galaxy. The choice they made now would define their species for generations to come.